Hello, it's Mrs. Olson reading your final two chapters. Chapter 11, All at Sea. Ahoy, mateys! I squeaked toward shore even though I knew no one could hear me. Then in my best pirate voice I added, Arg! My friends were cheering wildly when suddenly out of the corner of my eye I saw something dark in the water. For an instant I remembered a report on sharks that Art had read to the class. Yeek! Then I recognized the shape of Richie's submarine gliding through the water, heading straight for me. Suddenly, the submarine began to surface. Richie had said it was supposed to come up next to the boat, but it was heading directly for it. I wasn't the only one who noticed as I heard voices. Voices everywhere. It's a submarine! Where'd that come from? Richie's in the bushes and he has a remote control. It's going to hit the boat. Eek! Eek! That's when I heard, Repeat it, please, Richie's voice. What? He asked. AJ's voice was loud and clear. It's going to hit the boat, and Humphrey's on it. Humphrey? Richie sounded shocked. Do something, Richie, Mandy screamed. I'm trying, he shouted back. I could see people running around on shore, but I was hanging on for dear life, and I didn't have time to pay much attention to them. Just then the submarine hit, and the sailboat tilted sharply to one side. Luckily, I managed to hang on to the bow of the boat, or else I would have slid into the water too. Well, certain disaster. I'm sure Richie didn't mean to hit the ship. Maybe he wasn't as good as handling a submarine as he'd thought. On shore, my friends were in a panic. Save him! Save Humphrey! They all screamed. Save me! I squeaked as the boat rocked and rolled. Whose sub is it? Mrs. Brisbane called. I'd never heard her voice sound so alarmed. Mine, Richie answered. I'm backing it away. Screech! I don't know what Mrs. Wright thought that whistle would do to help me, but she blew it over and over again. And then the boat tipped all the way over on its side, the sails floating next to it in the water. My friends all shrieked, Humphrey! Eek! I squeaked. I suddenly wished Og was around to help me out. I hung on to the side for dear life, but the water was getting closer, and believe me, it was too close for comfort. We're going down, I squeaked, although I was actually the only one going down. I remember Mr. Morales saying the pond was shallow, but for a hamster it would surely be deep, deep, deep. I tried not to think about the little sunken ship at the bottom of Mr. Fitch's fish tank. I also recalled Mrs. Brisbane's warning about hamsters getting wet. I wasn't sure whether I could swim or not, but I did not want to find out. Just then I saw the long periscope of Richie's submarine right next to me. I took a deep breath and leaped across the water to grab hold of it. All those hours of jumping on my wheel and spinning have certainly paid off. Now he's hanging on to the periscope! That was AJ shouting. Look! There were cheers from the shore, but I wasn't about to cheer until I reached dry land. I was clinging to the periscope for dear life when the beautiful tall ship dropped down below the edge of the water. Mrs. Brisbane shouted at Richie, Can you bring him in safely? I can do it, he answered. No hamster ever hung on to anything as tightly as I hung on to that periscope. The water was only inches below me. I wouldn't have minded being a googly-eyed green frog with no fur at all, at least for a few minutes. But soon the submarine glided towards shore. Without hesitation, Richie and Kirk both waded out to rescue me. They didn't even worry about their clothes getting wet. Luckily, Mr. Morales was right. The water in Potter's Pond was shallow, at least to humans. Hurry, said Kirk. It's going to sink. Okay, but watch it, Richie replied as they approached the submarine. We don't want to splash water on Humphrey. Richie gently plucked me off the periscope and held me in his cupped hands. Sorry, Humphrey, he said softly. I'm so sorry. I was shivering as he carefully carried me to shore and handed me to Mrs. Brisbane. You're shaking, she said, and she was right. She opened the lid of the small woven basket and took out a pile of colorful ribbons. "You'll be safe in here," she told me. Golden Miranda brought me a little cup of water to drink. Nice. "This is strictly against the rules," Mrs. Wright insisted. "I demand an explanation." "Yes, please tell us what happened, Richie," Mrs. Brisbane said in a very, very mad voice. "I can't believe Humphrey was on board," he said. "How'd he get there?" That was a question only I could answer. "We'll figure that out," Mrs. Brisbane said. "But why did you sink your own ship?" "I didn't mean to sink it," Richie protested, and I believed him. "I just wanted to show Kirk I know about boats, too." Mrs. Brisbane turned to Kirk. "Do you know what he means?" Kirk shrugged. I guess he didn't think I let him help out enough." "He didn't let me help at all," Richie said. What he said was true. Mrs. Brisbane turned to Kirk again. "Why didn't you let Richie help?" Kirk, who was always cracking jokes, looked very serious. "I wanted to win, and I thought we had a better chance if I did all of the work." "So whose fault was it that Humphrey almost drowned?" the teacher asked. Whoa, hearing her say that made me shake and quake. "Mine," Richie answered. "But I wouldn't want anything to happen to Humphrey." "It was your fault, Richie." Mrs. Brisbane nodded. "Don't you agree, Kirk?" Kirk stared at the ground and didn't answer right away. Finally he said, "Yes, but I guess it was kind of my fault too, because I made Richie mad. Winning wouldn't have been worth it if something had happened to Humphrey. I'm sorry." "Well, don't apologize to me," Mrs. Brisbane said. She sounded pretty upset. Kirk looked at Richie. "I'm sorry, Richie. I wasn't very nice to you." "I'm sorry, too." Richie looked embarrassed. It was a dumb idea to bring the submarine. I just was so mad. "The next thing I want to know is who put Humphrey in that boat," Mrs. Brisbane said. "But I'll deal with that later. Right now, it's time for our treasure hunt." My classmates and I squealed with delight when Mr. Brisbane passed out treasure maps. He said, "Boys and girls, it's said that the famous pirate Captain Kidd buried his treasure right here by Potter's Pond." So that's who the captain was. Captain Kidd. "Follow these old maps to find the hidden treasure," Mr. Brisbane explained. "Remember, X marks the spot." My friends set off among the paths and the trees, looking for clues. I longed to join them, but I'd had enough adventures for one day, so I just watched and listened. It wasn't too long before I heard Mandy shout, "I found it! The X is right here!" There was a rush of footsteps. Mrs. Brisbane picked up my basket and said, "Come on, Humphrey. You might as well see this too." She carried me to a little clearing where Mandy, Art, and Tabitha stood by an old trunk that looked just like a pirate's treasure chest with a big X carved on top. She pushed my lid back so I could see better. "Should we open it?" Tabitha asked. They all agreed they should, but just as they tipped the lid open, 1, 2, 3 pirates leaped out of the bushes. My friends screamed at the sight of these strangers, who lunged at the crowd. My heart just about jumped out of my chest. I'd almost forgotten about the pirates. "Arg!" growled the first pirate. "Avast!" snarled the second pirate. The third pirate was even more menacing. "Stop right there, mateys!" he roared. "Don't even be thinking of touching Captain Kidd's treasure." The 3 pirates stood in front of the treasure chest, looking scary, 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 and mean, mean, mean. The first pirate had on a bright red shirt and a bright blue sash. He had dark hair, a big gold earring, and a patch over one of his eyes. The second pirate wore shiny black pants, a long red coat with big gold buttons, and a genuine pirate hat. At least it looked genuine to me. He also had big, round glasses. Funny, I'd never seen a pirate with glasses before. The third pirate had striped pants tucked into black boots, a black tunic with a belt, a kerchief on his head, and a big black mustache. "Landlubbers!" he shouted in a familiar voice. "Back off from me treasure, or I'll introduce ye to Davy Jones." My friends screamed and backed up, but I could swear that I'd seen that mustache before. Suddenly, Richie called out, "It's Uncle Aldo!" And the other kids started to laugh and shriek, "It's Aldo!" they yelled. Of course it was Aldo. He'd been practicing being a pirate for weeks. He gave a jolly laugh when they recognized him. But what about the others? The first pirate pushed up his eye patch and we could see who he was. Principal Morales. "Arg!" he repeated, but this time he was smiling. My friends all squealed with laughter. The second pirate took off his hat and bowed before us. "Greetings," he said, and we all realized that he was Mr. Fitch. That pirate hat in the library was his after all. Suddenly these pirates didn't seem scary at all. "Be ye ready to unlock the secrets of the deep?" asked Aldo as he opened the lid. Inside were mounds of yummy sandwiches and juices and cookies. My friends acted as if they'd never seen food before. They screamed with delight as they hurried towards the chest. Seth and Tabitha got there first, but as soon as they put their hands on the food, another voice rang out. "How dare ye touch me treasure?" This was definitely a female voice. "Stop, or the lot of ye will end up asleep in the deep." Everyone gasped, including me, as out of the bushes stepped a female pirate. She had on tall boots, a red skirt, big gold hoop earrings, and a white top with billowy sleeves. Even with a pirate hat and the eye patch she wore, I could see her bouncing black curls. And I knew that voice. That treasure came all the way from Brazil, she stated. But my friends didn't let her finish. "Miss Mac! Miss Mac!" they shouted with joy as they rushed forward to greet her. There she was, Miss Mac, the teacher who rescued me from Petorama, who gave me a notebook and pencil, and first discovered what a handsome and smart hamster I am. "Miss Mac is back!" I squeaked loudly, surprising even myself. Miss Mac hurried over to my basket. "Humphrey!" she cried. "There's the real treasure." She gently scratched my back, and I had a funny feeling from the wiggly tip of my nose to the squiggly tips of my toes. I'd had that feeling before, way back when. I think they call it love. All of my friends loved Miss Mac and wanted to be near her. They gave her sandwiches and juice and gathered around her. "What do you think of our secret guest?" Mrs. Brisbane said. Miss Mac was our secret guest, so that's what the secret G on the list stood for. "Do you have to go back to Brazil?" Miranda asked. "No, my term ended," Miss Mac explained. "I'm back here to stay, if I can find a job." While everyone ate, Mr. Fitch played the harmonica, and Aldo and Mr. Morales danced the sailor's hornpipe. "Well done, me hearties!" I squeaked, but no one could hear me over the applause. Then Mrs. Brisbane quieted everyone down. "Don't you think it's time for the prizes?" In her hand were the ribbons she'd taken out of the basket. Everyone cheered when Saya and Miranda received blue ribbons. Even though their swan boat didn't last, it definitely was the most beautiful boat. But when it came down to the most seaworthy boat, it wasn't so easy to decide who had won. Undoubtedly, the tall ship would have won, Mr. Brisbane said, but because of what happened, I can only award it honorable mention. Richie and Kirk didn't seem disappointed to receive red ribbons. As for first place, we were all so busy worrying about Humphrey, no one really noticed which boat came in first. Since Seth and Tabitha's Chinese junk and Heidi and Gail's sailboat both made it to the shore, we're calling it a tie. You'll all receive gold ribbons. From the cheers and smiles, I could tell that no one was disappointed. Seth and Tabitha did a funny victory dance. Heidi and Gail joined in. Then Mrs. Morgenstern came over to congratulate the girls. "You did a great job," she said. "I was so focused on you winning the most beautiful award, I didn't think of you actually winning the race. But you did it!" Gail and Heidi beamed. "And the sail was spectacular. That white sail on the blue water, it was a classic. Gail, you were right all along. I'm very proud of you." Gail and her mom hugged. Then Heidi and Gail's mom hugged. Then Heidi and Gail hugged. I wish there was someone for me to hug, although hugging might be a little dangerous for a small hamster like me. It was almost time to get back to school. As everyone else was busy packing up, I spotted Kirk and Richie wading into the water to retrieve their tall ship, which was half submerged near the edge of the pond. Luckily, the water only came up to their knees. Saya and Miranda watched on shore as a few of their colorful feathers floated by. Garth and AJ looked for their boat too, but all they could find was the flag. Art and Mandy waded in the water, but the Viking ship was totally gone. On the edge of the pond, Mr. Morales cupped his hands around his mouth and yelled, "If you see an old raft down there, let me know." When Kirk and Richie finally pulled the remains of the tall ship out of the water, it was muddy and mucky. But they cleaned it up, working together. I was happy to stay in my basket on the bus ride back. I sat between Mrs. Brisbane and Miss Mack, the best seat in the house. If I grabbed onto the inside of the basket, I could lift the top with my head just enough to see them both. "You certainly picked an interesting day to return," Mrs. Brisbane said. "Every day is interesting for the kids in room 26, Miss Mack replied. Mrs. Brisbane reached in her jacket and pulled out a piece of paper. In all the excitement, I forgot to check my list. Miss Mack and I could both see it. Lunches and drinks in the chest, treasure maps, Captain Kidd and his motley crew, blue, red, gold ribbons for prizes, secret guest, Miss Mack. "You didn't forget anything," Miss Mack said. Mrs. Brisbane folded up her paper. "No, but a few things happened that weren't on the list. You know what they say, the best laid plans of mice and men often go astray. The best laid plans of hamsters go astray too, but that's what makes life interesting." Soon, Mrs. Wright let us all in singing a boat song that was very interesting because different groups started it and ended it at different times. I squeaked up the loudest of all, "Row, row, row your boat." It was a fun song to sing, and I thought maybe someday I'd like to row gently down a stream. Even though today's trip had almost turned into a nightmare, seeing Miss Mack again was definitely a dream come true. A good heart, mateys, there be the only treasure worth having. Chapter 12, the final chapter. It's called Land Ho. When we got back to room 26, I was almost too tired to squeak, but I managed to tell Og I'd had a great adventure. Nearly drowned, but lived to tell the tale. Boing! At least he sounded interested. I didn't get to tell him more because the bell rang for recess, and my classmates streamed out of the room. The room wasn't empty for long, though, because Mrs. Wright, Mr. Morales, and Miss Mack all joined Mrs. Brisbane in the classroom. "Do you have a minute, Sue?" the principal asked. He was still wearing his red shirt with the bright blue sash. He'd taken off his earring and eye patch, though. "Of course," she said. "Please sit down." It's always funny to see grown-ups sitting on the kid-sized chairs in the classroom. I tried to imagine them as students. Mr. Morales would be a good student with a playful streak. Mrs. Brisbane would be an excellent student like Saya. Of course, Miss Mack would be an almost perfect human, like Miranda. But try as I did, I couldn't imagine Mrs. Wright as a child. "Did any of the students admit to smuggling Humphrey on the boat?" Mr. Morales asked. Mrs. Brisbane shook her head. "No, I think Kirk and Richie felt so terrible they would have confessed to it, but they didn't." "Maybe someone was jealous of their boat and did it to get them in trouble," Mrs. Wright suggested. "Maybe," said Mrs. Brisbane, "but I just can't imagine any of the students doing that." Mrs. Wright sniffed loudly. I know you think all of your students are perfect, she said, but someone had to have done it. He certainly couldn't have gotten in there all by himself. Suddenly, everyone turned to look at me. I didn't plan on going along, I squeaked in self-defense. It just happened. Miss Mack laughed her lovely, tinkling laugh. He's been known to get out of his cage before, Mrs. Brisbane said, but Bert fixed the door so he can't get out anymore. Mrs. Wright stood up and clomped over to my cage. Even if he could open up the cage, you can't tell me this little rat or guinea pig or whatever he is could possibly get down from the table, run all across the room, and get in the boat by himself. Impossible. Simply impossible. I'm a hamster, I squeaked back at her, and it's not impossible. Boing, 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 Og chimed in. This time everyone laughed, except for Mrs. Wright. I guess Mr. Morales was sorry he'd laughed. You have a point, Ruth. Mrs. Wright sniffed again. Maybe she was allergic to hamsters. We can't have animals willy-nilly running around the school and the buses and on picnics. It was only one animal, Mrs. Brisbane said softly. The bell rang again, and Mr. Morales stood up. Look, Mrs. Brisbane has been handling her students and their problems for 30 years. I think she can handle this one. Let's move on. He left along with Miss Mack and Mrs. Wright, just before my friends returned from recess. Mrs. Brisbane came over to my cage and jiggled on the door. It was fastened tightly, of course. Humphrey, I must say life is never dull with you around. Thanks, I squeaked. That's what a classroom hamster is for. After school, when we were alone, I told Og the whole story. When I finished, I remembered something else. I have to say, Og, that as I was about to sink, I thought of you. It was strange to remember seeing his goofy face flash before me. I know if you'd been there, you would have saved me because you can swim. And because you're my friend. I was surprised at how quickly Og responded with a boing, 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 boing. I do the same for you, I continued. I can't swim, but I'd think of something. I guess we make a pretty good team after all. Maybe Kirk and Richie will too. Og dived into the water with an impressive splash. And with that, I crawled into my sleeping hut and slept soundly, dreaming about high seas, pirates, best friends, and yes, Miss Mack. No more boat building, no more pirate talk, no more contests. The very next day, we were back to regular old school again, but after my close call with Davy Jones' locker, I didn't mind. Not that the subject of the boat race didn't come up. Mrs. Brisbane began the day with a very serious look on her face. Boys and girls, we still don't know who sneaked Humphrey into the boat and onto the bus. If the guilty party would like to confess now, it would make all of our lives a little easier. There were some shuffling feet and a few cleared throats, but no one confessed. There was no one to confess except for me. I hate to punish the whole class, Mrs. Brisbane began. I couldn't take it any longer. I did it! It was me! I squeaked as loudly as I could. Everyone laughed, even Mrs. Brisbane. I guess Humphrey has the last word for now, she said. If anyone would like to confess to me in private, I'd appreciate it. Meanwhile, we're moving on. Over the next few days, there were a few changes in room 26. First of all, Richie and Kirk had to write letters of apology to each other. Then each of them had to give a speech to the class, apologizing for almost ruining the boat race. In his speech, Kirk said that teamwork was more important than winning, and the team that works together always comes out ahead in the end. As usual, he ended it with a joke. This time, it was one I'd already heard, about the Scarecrow winning the award for being outstanding in his field. Richie made the point that 2 wrongs don't make a right. At first, I thought he was talking about Mrs. Wright, and I shivered just a little bit thinking about her and that whistle, though she's a very good song leader. But then I realized that he meant just because Kirk treated Richie the wrong way didn't make it right for Richie to break the rules and bring along the submarine. I cheered loudly for both of their speeches. Aldo changed back to his regular, non-pirate ways of talking and cleaning. Thank goodness. But every once in a while he'd do a little hornpipe dance while he was dusting. The other change in room 26 was something or someone wonderful. Miss Mack came in to help Mrs. Brisbane for 2 hours every single day. Then she would go to the library and help Mr. Fitch for another hour or two. She smelled so good, and she always remembered to bring me yummy treats like apple slices and strawberries. Having her around was a dream come true. One day, she asked Mrs. Brisbane if she could have lunch with her. They sat across from each other at Mrs. Brisbane's desk, and took out sandwiches and water and yummy-looking fruit, and they just talked. "I'm so glad it worked out with Humphrey," Miss Mack said. "When I left here, I wasn't sure you'd like having a classroom hamster." "I wasn't sure myself," Mrs. Brisbane admitted, "but he's added a lot to the class." "Good," said Miss Mack. She chewed on her sandwich a little more and then said, "I'm a little worried about what I'm going to do now that I'm back. I need to make some money." "Funny. I've been worrying about that too," Mrs. Brisbane replied. She didn't look worried, though. In fact, she was grinning. "And I have some ideas," she said. Miss Mack's big brown eyes got even bigger. "What?" "I don't want to say yet, but you are a very talented young teacher, and I know of several opportunities coming up," Mrs. Brisbane said, and was being awfully mysterious. "You'll find out soon." "What? What?" I shouted. The two women chuckled. "It sounds like Humphrey has a few ideas, too," Miss Mack said. "He always does," Mrs. Brisbane agreed. "Speaking of Humphrey, has anyone confessed to smuggling him in the boat?" "Well, yes, you actually heard him confess. So Mrs. Brisbane did understand me." Miss Mack glanced over at my cage. Could Humphrey really do that? Mrs. Brisbane looked my way, too. If there's one thing I've learned this year, when it comes to Humphrey, anything is possible. "Boing, boing," Og twanged, splashing in his tank. The two teachers burst out laughing. When they finished their lunches, they gave me a treat. From Mrs. Brisbane, it was a small and crunchy carrot, and from Miss Mack, it was a soft, sweet slice of banana. I crossed my paws and hoped they have lunch in room 26 more often. And then something really wonderful happened. Miss Mack brought Mr. Fitch to room 26 one day. He said that due to my bravery during the boat race and my contributions to the class, he was presenting me with my very own library card. And there it was, a lovely little rectangle that read, "This card grants full library privileges at Longfellow School to Humphrey." He taped it to the outside of my cage. Everyone applauded. Then Miranda Golden, my special friend, raised her hand. "But how is Humphrey going to check out the book? He can't get to the library by himself." "Oh, humans, there's so much they don't know. In fact, I was already planning to stroll down to the library later that night to see if there was a good movie I could watch." "We'll just have to help him out," Mrs. Brisbane answered, "just like he's always helped us." "Hooray for Humphrey Dumpty!" AJ suddenly shouted. My friends all joined in, and I even heard Og say "boing" in agreement. "Thanks, mateys," I squeaked back happily. "Hooray, hooray, hooray." Even a pirate can say "thank ye, mateys." The end.